Rivelino. Oh, it's a terrific goal.
The 1970 Brazil team is still called the greatest ever assembled. Not one of those players would pass a modern elite academy assessment today. Two facts, 50 years apart, and somewhere between them, the game made a choice, one it never announced. Somewhere in the history of this sport, a decision was made. Not in a boardroom, not in a single moment. Slowly, quietly, so gradually that most people never noticed it happening. Football turned against them, the artists of the game. And the question nobody is asking, was it an accident? Let's go back to where this story starts. Mexico City, 1970, 90-degree heat, and a Brazilian team that played as if the game had been invented specifically for them. Pelé, Tostão, Jairzinho, Rivelino. No GPS vests, no expected goals metric, no coach telling them which channel to press into. Just 11 human beings doing something with a football that no diagram had ever described. And that team wasn't an accident. It was the product of an environment, one that was about to be dismantled forever. Imagine being in Naples in 1987. The whole city has stopped. Not for a politician, not for a pope, for one man with a ball at his feet. Diego Maradona grew up in Villa Fiorito, a shantytown on the edge of Buenos Aires. Dirt streets, no coaches, no structure, just a ball, the concrete, and the total freedom to invent. That freedom is where everything came from, the back heel, the elastico, the ability to see the pass nobody else could see, because nobody had told him which passes were allowed. These players were not just talented. They were produced by an environment, and that environment was already disappearing. Because something was coming. Something that would redefine what a footballer was supposed to be, from the ground up. The truth is, the game was always going to reach this moment. Beauty, without a structure to contain it, eventually becomes inconvenient. And football, above everything, hates inconvenience. 1987, Arrigo Sacchi takes charge of AC Milan. He has never played professional football. When the press questioned his credentials, club president Berlusconi answered them with one line. He said, "I didn't know that to be a jockey, you had to have been a horse." Sacchi introduced total organization, total collective movement, every player a function, every second off the ball as choreographed as every second on it. No free men, no space for the unplanned moment, no room for the player who simply needed a ball at their feet and permission to be themselves. Milan won back-to-back European Cups, and every coaching manual in the world started taking notes. Then came the money. The Premier League in 1992 turned football into a financial equation, and mistakes became expensive. The tolerance for the player who might do something genius or something catastrophic, the artist, the gambler, the free man, shrank. Then came Guardiola, and the system became something more dangerous than tactics. It became a philosophy. His Barcelona didn't just suppress artists, it converted them. Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, immersed so completely in the structure that their genius could only express itself through it, not in spite of it. The truth is, Guardiola didn't hate artists. He was one, the most tactically creative manager of his generation. But his artistry lived in the system, and he had no patience for a kind of genius that his system could not contain. The free man was no longer just unnecessary. He was dangerous. So what happens to a player built entirely for freedom when the game decides freedom is a liability? To answer that, we need to talk about the most expensive footballer in history at the time and what the system did to him. Somewhere in Mogi das Cruzes, Brazil, a boy grew up playing football the way all of this started, on concrete, without instructions, inventing. By 21, he was doing things with a ball that looked physically impossible, and the whole world was watching. Barcelona paid 90 million euros. Messi was waiting. The stage was set. Barcelona versus the free man. It had happened before. It would happen again. Neymar just didn't know he was walking into a story that was already written. Instead, he found PSG, the cage, the injuries. How could someone with every tool, the talent, the club, the moment, end up at 34 talking about retirement on a YouTube channel? He left Barcelona for Paris Saint-Germain in 2017 for 222 million euros. He said he wanted to lead, to be free, to be the man rather than the second man. Instead, he found the most expensive cage in the history of football. The truth is, it was never about the money. It was about what PSG needed him to be: a symbol, a product, a marketing asset with goals. Not a free man, not an artist, a function. And Neymar, built entirely for something else, tried to play that role for 8 years and broke himself doing it. A dressing room at war with itself. A city that turned on him. A body that kept breaking, as if it was refusing to function inside a world built for something other than what he was. 196 days on the sidelines in his first year back at Santos. Knee surgery at 33. His own father, on camera, describing the moment Neymar turned to him and said, "I can't take it anymore, Dad. I don't even know if it's worth operating." The boy who was supposed to be better than Pelé, asking whether it was worth going on. That is not a sports story. That is something much darker. But was Neymar the author of his own decline, or the most visible casualty of something the game had already decided? Let's see what football actually became. By the 2010s, data had arrived, not just as a tool, as a language. Expected goals, pressing intensity, distance covered per 90, a number for everything. Every single contribution measurable, every single action logged, except one. You cannot put expected magic into a spreadsheet, and the data revolution, for all its brilliance, proved that faster than anyone intended. Dribble success rates across Europe's top 5 leagues have fallen from over 55% to an average of around 45% in the last 3 seasons. Read that again. The game became more analytically sophisticated, more tactically structured, more data-driven than at any point in its history. And the players brave enough to still attempt a dribble, to still try the unpredictable thing, are now failing more often than they used to. The system didn't just reduce the number of artists, it made the ones who remained less effective. The data revolution was supposed to make football smarter. Instead, it made a specific kind of courage, the courage to be unpredictable, statistically less viable, and the fans absorbed it. The language of analytics became the language of the stands. The skill that didn't lead to a goal became showing off. The failed dribble became selfishness. The pass that didn't come off became, "He's inconsistent. Can't do it in a big game." The crowd that once gave Maradona a standing ovation simply for controlling a ball was now tweeting about press completion rates. The culture had been rewired, and the artists were being billed for the electricity. But here's the thing about rational decisions. They can have irrational consequences, and this one had the most irrational consequence of all. The truth is, there was no conspiracy. No villain in a room, no memo, No single decision that changed everything. Football didn't turn against its artists because it hated beauty. It turned against them because it was optimizing. And optimization, by definition, removes the inefficient. An artist, in the language of a modern football system, is inefficient. They take risks. They lose the ball attempting things that might not work. They are, by design, unpredictable, which means they cannot be fully drilled because the thing that makes them extraordinary lives outside the drill. The game didn't make a villainous choice. It made a rational one. There was no meeting, no boardroom decision, no memo that said, "We are done with the beautiful players." Just thousands of individual decisions made by thousands of individual clubs and coaches and scouts and academies, all following the same logic. If structure beats talent, why develop talent that resists structure? And the rational choice, multiplied across 30 years of football infrastructure, slowly removed from the game the very thing that made people fall in love with it in the first place. The villain in this story isn't Guardiola. It isn't Sacchi. It isn't the analysts or the money or the data. The villain is a logic. And a logic is far more dangerous than a person because you cannot fire a logic. So if the villain is a logic, is there any way back? Or has the game already made its final choice? The consequences of that choice are still being counted.
In the same way, I don't think too much about myself.
And they live in a place most people never think to look. The consequences live in the academies. The moment the system decided it no longer needed the artist, it stopped creating the conditions where artists emerge. Children at 6 are given positions, formations, pressing instructions. The chaos that produced Maradona in Villa Fiorito was replaced by the structure that produces a reliable box-to-box midfielder. You cannot engineer what the street produces. You can only create the space for it to appear. And the space is gone. Look at what the last 20 years cost. Ronaldinho, Adriano, Robinho, Dembele, Griezmann. Barcelona versus Ronaldinho. Barcelona versus Dembele. Barcelona versus Griezmann. The names change every few years. The result never does. The institution always wins. And Neymar, who began on concrete in Mogi das Cruzes, inventing everything, now living year to year at Santos, trying to find the version of himself that ran before the system found him. The game is still extraordinary. The athleticism is breathtaking. The organization, admirable. But when did you last watch a moment and genuinely not know what was about to happen? Because that, the not knowing, is what the artist gave us. And it is what the logic took away. What it didn't calculate was the cost of winning it. Somewhere right now, there's a child doing something with a football that no coach planned. Something unpredictable. Something that breaks the pattern. Something that would make 70,000 people rise from their seats. The question is what happens to that child. Whether the game, when it finds them, gives them room to stay exactly that. Or whether it does what it has done to every artist before them, hands them a system, gives them a position, and waits patiently for the beautiful thing to disappear. The truth is, the game never needed to declare war on its artists. It just needed to stop making space for them. And space, once taken away, is almost impossible to reclaim. Football turned against its artists, and the artists, most of them, kept playing anyway. Not because the game deserved it. But there is one man in this story who didn't just build the system, who turned it into a philosophy, a language, a way of seeing football so complete that his fingerprints are now on the game itself. His players became his disciples. Mikel Arteta carried it to Arsenal. Thiago Alcantara took it to every dressing room he entered. Xavi brought it home to Barcelona. Even Kevin De Bruyne, the one player in Guardiola's system who moved most like an artist, had learned to be an artist inside a cage. The system didn't just win one season, it reproduced itself. And the next generation of coaches doesn't know any other way. Next time, the cult of Guardiola. How one man's idea became football's only idea.